So glad each of you are here today, and we're really thankful that you're with us. And wow, I love the book of Nehemiah. How many of you have ever had the experience of having somebody in your life that it just seemed like whenever you were starting to make progress, they were not in favor somehow? You know what I'm talking about? They knock you down, they trip you up, they sabotage you somehow. It's like you can't go forward because it seems like they're hanging onto your leg, and you're like, come on, There's a story, one of my favorite jokes, told about a guy that went out to play 18 holes of golf, and he came back in the evening. He was getting on toward evening. He just collapsed into the chair, and his wife said, "Babe, what's the matter?" He said, "It's a terrible day." He said, "Bob had a heart attack and dropped dead on the fourth green." And she said, "Oh, babe, I'm so sorry. That must have been terrible." He said, "It was. The rest of the day, hit the ball, drag Bob. Hit the ball, drag." Oh, anybody ever feel like in your life, you've got a Bob in your life? You know what I'm talking about? Like every time you try to, it's hit the ball, drag Bob. Hit the ball, drag Bob. Oh. Some of y'all know Bob. Some of you are married to Bob. No, I'm just joking. All right. You're not alone. If you've got somebody in your life like that, you're not alone. There's always going to be people who push back on whatever good happens in your life. There's always going to be people who are naysayers and who mouth off and who mock and make fun and drag you down and shoot at you with words. There's always going to be people like that. In fact, the reasons for it can be all kind of different things. It doesn't have to be even a clear reason. Sometimes I don't think they know why they're mad. It's just that they don't want you to go forward. It seems like when you try to make progress, even especially spiritual progress, you're trying to really move toward the Lord. You're trying to really go with God, leaving sin behind. I'm cutting off the old life. I'm dropping all that old baggage, and I'm moving forward. It seems like within 48 hours, somebody's going to try to take you down, right? Like somebody's going to come along and mouth off and say this and say that. It just seems like that's the way it goes. We'll shut the door and get them out the door. That's right. But sometimes it's hard to do that. It's hard to shut out the noise. Sometimes it's difficult because they seek you out or because they're in your family. It's hard sometimes to shut out the noise. Today I want to talk to you about what to do when they don't want you to win. Everybody's got a they, right? When they out here saying this and they're talking about it, everybody's got a they. What do you do when they, whoever they is, they don't want you to win? Well, G.K. Chesterton, I got a quote there at the top of your notes. If you're taking notes this morning, I'm using a handout. The Bible tells us to love our enemies and to love our neighbors, probably because they're usually the same people. That could be true sometimes. Not y'all. Not y'all neighbors. Y'all are good. Ola, y'all are okay. Teresa, that's all good. Yeah, they're my neighbors. So, what do you do? Well, let me catch you up on Nehemiah. Nehemiah is a man of God who has been sent away into Babylon. He's one of the Israelites. They were sent away for 70 years into captivity in Babylon. They were slaves. But Nehemiah, because of his wisdom and his intelligence and his skill and education, has risen to a very influential position. In that position, he kind of has the ear of the king, and the king will listen to his advice, and they'll bounce ideas back and forth, and he kind of serves as a sounding board for the king of Persia. And so as he's in this place, he hears about a few of the people who have been able to go back to Jerusalem, the city where he's from, where his fathers, grandfathers, and all that are from originally. They've been able to go back. But when one of them comes back from Jerusalem and he says, "Oh, how is it going in Jerusalem? Is everything okay?" And they say, "No, it's horrible. The gates of the city are burned with fire. The walls are broken down. We're in dismay and distress. We're a laughing stock to the people around us." You hear about those fools living in Jerusalem? They're living in a place that's all broken down. And I tell you what, there's nothing over there worth. They're a bunch of losers. And that's the kind of attitude people had toward the people who were living there. The people who this is supposed to be their triumph. We're going back home. We're gonna go back to Jerusalem. And they get there and it's not what they thought it was. And Nehemiah hears about this and his heart breaks. There's no leadership there. There's nobody to challenge the people to rise up and make something happen. And Nehemiah says, "God, if you'll help me, I'm going to go back and I'm going to make something happen." And so he talks to the king. And the king says, "You can go." And Nehemiah, he finds his why. Why am I here? Why do I exist? I exist to help build Jerusalem for the glory of God. And the king listens to him and sends him back, gives him supplies, gives him some protection on the road and letters to say this is a project the king has approved. And so he goes back, he rides around the wall, and it is horrible. Some places he can't even ride his horse through because the wall that used to be built and so beautiful around Jerusalem is crashed to the ground and broken and smashed into 1,000 pieces. So he gets the people together and he says, "Let's rebuild this wall. Let's do it. We can do this." And the people listen and they start the project and they start building and they put stones together and they're mixing mortar and they're carrying stones. Anybody ever tried to work with your own hands and just like a lifting rocks and picking rocks up and stacking them? Whew, after a while, you trying to lift rocks and stack them on top of each other and mix concrete. Anybody ever done concrete work? How many ever done concrete work? That concrete is heavy. It is ridiculously heavy. I remember when I was a kid, I thought I was going to help out with my dad. They were building a footer for a building that they were building, and I thought I was going to help out. And so I picked up that wheelbarrow full of concrete, and I went a little ways with it. But it was one of those, is before they had the wheelbarrows with the two wheels on the front. You know what I'm talking about? They had just the one wheel in the front. And so I went a little ways with it. And then it started going. And you know what happened next, right? Because once it starts going, now I wasn't even as big now, big then as I am now, and I'm not very big now. But I guarantee you, when that handle came up, it just took me with it. It just, boom, all of a sudden I was on the ground, and so was the concrete. It just wasn't good. And it was heavy, hard labor. They're working hard. Man, but they're excited. This is great. We're going to rebuild the wall. It's hard work, but it's worth it. And then, let's read Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 1. When Sanballat, now, you don't know Sanballat. It's the only place he ever comes into the Scriptures in this book. Sanballat, but there should be a blast of scary music when I say that name, all right? Because here's the bad guy, all right? Here's the bad guy. Here we go. When Sanballat, da 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 da. All right, I don't know something. I don't know what it is. Maybe we should down 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 down. You know, I don't know something. He's the Darth Vader of this process, right? When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, okay, this guy's an influential guy in Samaria, just to the south of Jerusalem. He ridiculed them, and he said, "What are these feeble Jews doing?" Can't you hear his voice? Just, yeah. You know people that talk like that? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Oh, he's a comedian. He's going to make jokes about it. Can they bring stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are? Tobiah the Ammonite, now another blast of scary music here. You ever notice that bad guys come in twos? There's one bad guy, and then there's the one who agrees with him. Yeah, yeah, right? He's the henchman. He just goes alongside and just, yeah, yeah. Whatever the bad guy said, yeah, that's right. It makes you feel like, well, there must be lots of people that believe this. There's two of them right here, right? And they work in pairs, it seems like. And so when one person tries to drag you down, it seems like there's somebody else right there like, yeah, yeah. Tobiah is that guy. Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, what they are building, if even a fox climbed up on it, he would break down their wall of stones. Good one, Tobiah. Yeah. Now, here's the blank, if you're taking notes on your handout. When they criticize and mock, here it is, two things. Pray and work harder. Pray and work harder. Look what he does in verse 4. Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. Now, I want to stop and say this real quick. Don't be a person who throws insults in the face of the builder. Now, when I say insults in the face of the builder, there's some people in this life that are willing to risk something and try something and work hard and do their best and reach out there and put themselves out at risk. And then there's people who mouth off about it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't think that's never happened. It just you can't possibly. I'd never done it. We never did it that way before. Don't be one of those people who throws insults in the face of the builders. There's builders and busters, right, in this world. There's dream builders and there's dream busters. Don't be a dream buster. Don't be one of those people who mouths off. But these guys, they've thrown insults in the face of the builders. If you start to follow the Lord, teenagers, y'all hear me on this one for a minute, okay? All you folks who go to high school, Isaiah, check this out, man. All you guys that go to high school, if you start following the Lord, I promise you, there are going to be people who don't want you to follow Jesus. And some of them, they'll come in teams and they'll be in packs and they'll try to entice you to do wrong. And they'll try to trip you up and trick you into turning aside from the path of the Lord. I promise you it'll happen. Guarantee it, every single time. And you've got to make a decision right now how you're going to respond to that set of people. Are you going to, I guess they're probably right, and yeah, I guess nobody else in my family is trying this, and nobody else is doing it, and the cool kids, they're all doing something else. They're doing what they're going to do, and you got to decide what you're going to do when that person comes along in your life. I want to tell you, pray and work harder at it. Double down. Oh yeah, so this is the way they're going to act. They told me I can't follow Jesus. I'm going to pray twice as much. All right? I promise you, double down and say, I will do more, and I will work harder, and I will be more determined to follow the Lord, not less. When they throw an insult in my face, I'm going to work harder. Haters going to hate, right? But I am going to follow Jesus. Look at verse number 6. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. That's what I mean. When they ridicule and criticize and mock you for trying something and trying to build a life that is different. My grandmother, when she began to follow the Lord, she was the only person in her family who was a Christian. She was not able even to attend church because she was 18 miles out on a dirt road away outside of town, and you didn't exactly walk to church, and nobody else in her family went in North Carolina. But when she made the decision to go, she made the decision to go with the Lord with all her heart. Friends would try to turn her aside and try to get her to do this and get her to do that. But God would keep talking to her and saying, this is the way I want you to do. And she'd say, okay. And she'd just double down and try again and try harder. And it changed, literally changed my family tree. The family I have now, it would not look anything like it does if it wasn't for my grandma deciding she was going to follow God no matter what anybody else did. And I have to tell you, you're going to have that decision. No matter what anybody else does, if nobody else at Jefferson Middle School follows the Lord, if nobody else at Grant High School does, if nobody else in my family does, if my wife or my husband or my girlfriend or my boyfriend doesn't, too bad for them. I'm going to follow Jesus. My grandfather, on the other side of the family, my granddaddy Agan, none of you guys ever met him. You would have loved this guy. He was a big smile. He was a hugger. You know what I'm talking about, right? You met a hugger, right? My granddaddy was a hugger. He'd just like, hey, he'd give you a big old, he didn't matter if you the first time he'd ever met you. He'd just give you a big old hug. That was my granddaddy. And he was living in Georgia, and in his family, not very many people really followed the Lord in my granddaddy's family. And he started going to church. He started trying to follow the Lord. He said God made him so happy. God forgave his sins, and he knew he was forgiven. He was right with God, and he started following the Lord. And he said the pastor gave him the job in that little country church in Georgia. He gave him the job of going in there and building the fire. Starting the fire in the potbelly stove in the church. So he'd get there an hour early, and he'd bring the wood in. He'd go in and he'd start the fire in the stove and warm everything up. And he said sometimes on a Wednesday night, he'd get the fire built, and then he'd stand by the back door with a stack of songbooks, because they would pass the songbooks out when you came in. And he said he stood by the back door with a stack of songbooks. And he said there'd be nobody. Sometimes nobody would show up, even the pastor. And he said after a while, he said, well, I guess they're not going to come today. And he'd put the songbooks away, and he'd put the fire out, and he said then he'd kind of feel discouraged, kind of feel down. He said he'd start walking home, those dirt roads, those red clay roads back in Cartersville, Georgia. He'd start walking down the road, and he'd start thinking about, God's been good to me, though, even though nobody else is here. God's been good to me. He said before long, he'd be walking a little faster and thinking about how good God was. And he said after a while, he'd be skipping down the road, whistling down those roads, heading home. You know why? Because he was determined to follow the Lord. He told a story before he passed away. He told me a story. He said, I remember one day when I was wrestling over whether I was going to follow God or not. And he said, God, I was praying over it. He said, I feel like something's not right in my heart. And he said, I was praying over it. And he said, all of a sudden, God said to me, son, if nobody else in your family takes this way, are you going to go? And he said, I wrestled over that. He said, because you got to understand, my granddaddy was a guy who loved his family and just loved people and just wanted everybody to go along. Let's take the whole group. That was him. And he said, I fought over that and wrestled over that. But finally, I said, Lord, if nobody else in my family goes, I'll go. He said, God got even more specific. If your mom and dad don't go, will you go? And he said, I wrestled over that. I don't want to walk away from that relationship and follow the Lord and them not go along. I want to be part of this family. But he said, finally, I told the Lord, I'll go if nobody else goes, if mom and dad don't go. It changed my family. Both sides, my mom's dad and my dad's mom, both of those sides, it changed my family forever. And what you understand is you're building something, like Nehemiah, you're building something that's going to last. You're building something different. You're rebuilding for the glory of God. You want to build something that you got to understand that those people, though they are both dead and gone, they are affecting my children, their great-grandchildren. are being impacted by the choices they made. And Nehemiah is building something he wants to last for hundreds of years into the future. And if you're going to do that, there's always going to be people who grab a hold of you and say, no, come on. You don't want to go this way. Come on. And they're pulling back. You'll never make it. They're making fun and mouthing off. You got to understand your decision to pray and work harder matters when they don't want you to win. There's an old saying, you can talk about me just as much as you please. I'll talk about you when I'm on my knees. Yeah. Number two. When they threaten, prepare. When they threaten, prepare. Sometimes it's not enough for people just to mouth off. Sometimes people are going to mouth off and criticize and but sometimes they take it to another level. Let's look at it. Verse 7. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, and the Ammonites, and the men of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's wall had gone ahead, and that the gaps in the wall were being closed, they were very angry, and they all plotted to come together and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. Oh dear. Oh dear, not good. This is they're taking it to another level. How many of you have had that experience where somebody mouths off, but then they take it up a level? They go from just mouthing off and saying, you'll never make it, you're not really a Christian, they take it to a different level and they start sabotaging things. They start really talking about and gossiping about you and trying to make you lose your job. They'll mess up stuff and puncture your tires, and they're just kind of taking it up a notch and really fighting back. It happens. I have had people right here in this church try to serve the Lord, and people immediately start sabotaging and try to drag them backwards, and they bring drugs and they tell stories, and you're like, what are you doing, man? They're trying to change their life. What are you doing? But it happens. When that happens and somebody takes it up to the next level, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, look here. Verse number 9. We prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. They said, okay, if that's what they're going to do, we're going to be ready for them. If that's the way it's going to work, we're going to be ready. Whatever it takes, I'm going to guard against it. Now listen, this is important. If you know that punch is coming, you can guard against it. Right? If you know they are going to do something, you can guard against it. Figure it out. Make a plan. Get a plan in place. Ask some help. Whatever it takes to guard against that. Okay, I know that the devil wants to take me down, and I know he's going to attack me. I know it, and I know that I've not hid this. This is something that I struggled with for a long time, and that is things like pornography and things like that. I know that for 3 days this weekend, I'm going to be flying to Alabama, and I'm going to be alone in an airport in a city where nobody knows me. I know that. And I have multiple times walked through airports muttering under my breath my main verse that I use to deal with that temptation stuff in my life, which is, I have made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully on a young woman. It's from Job. It's from the book of Job. I've made a covenant with my eyes. Sometimes I just shorten it and I just use that phrase. I've made a covenant with my eyes. I've made a deal with my eyes how I'm going to use them. And I know that is... What am I talking about? I'm talking about preparing. I also know that I have a computer and I have an internet connection. And I know my weak spots, and I know the devil, and he's mean. And he's going to come along and he's going to try to take me down. And since I know that is true, since I know that punch is coming, I can guard against it. So I have a filter on every device, a filter on this network, where if you connect to this network, you don't have a choice but to have a filtered connection. You don't have a choice because I did it from the router. You can't change it. I can't change it either. I could, theoretically, but it would be a challenge. Now, what am I talking about? What I'm talking about is when they threaten you, prepare. Prepare. Get ready. Build some defenses. Make a plan. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to shut that off, and I'm not going to have... My children, because I am serious about building a wall around my home, my kids never get on the internet without me there or Liz there. Ever. They don't go to YouTube and just browse around. They don't do it. It does not happen. They know, and Gracie can tell you this, they know to come ask me if they want to get on the internet and do something. They do, and so it's in the family room. When they do that, they're in a family room with everybody else around. Because I don't give my kids a phone with an unrestricted internet connection. Ain't happening. It's not happening. Not in my family. Why? Because I'm building a wall, and I know the enemy's coming, and I know he's mean, and I have set a guard, and I will not allow that punch to knock down my boys and my girl. I won't let it happen, or me either. When they threaten, prepare. Get ready. Number 3, when they attack, show courage. Verse number 10, meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much rubble, we cannot rebuild the wall. You ever felt that way? Like, I'm just not sure I can make it. I'm tired, and I'm broken down, and I've tried, and I'm exhausted. I don't feel like I'm not going to make it. Some of you have been through this process in your marriage. Some of you have been through this process with your spiritual life. Some of you have been through this process with your family, and you're going through it, and you're trying to build, and you're trying to put the pieces back together, and you're going to counseling, and you're doing this. And listen to me, when you feel like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it. I don't know if I can push through this. I don't know. Just understand that you're under attack, and it's time to stand and show courage. Look at verse 11. Also, our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them, and we will kill them and put an end to the work. Verse 12, then the Jews who lived near them, near those enemies, came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Well, with friends like that, it's going to be bad. You have friends like that, it's going to be bad. I just don't think we can make it. I'm hoping maybe we can hold on till Jesus comes. Maybe. I'm not sure, but maybe. We're building something that's going to last. And I'm just not going to listen to those voices. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Therefore, verse 13, I stationed some of the people. Notice that when they come, when the people who are hand wringers, I'm talking about, it's just bad. When they come to Nehemiah and they say, wherever you go, they're going to attack you. It's going to be bad. They're going to kill you. Maybe you should just stop being mean. Maybe you should they'll stop if you just stop building. They won't come attack if you just quit building. Please, Nehemiah, just consider it's not, please, just. When those people come, Nehemiah says, all right, we're going to make a plan. We're not stopping. We're not quitting building. We're going to make a plan. We're going to get ready. So I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall. At the exposed places, I posted them by families with their swords and spears and bows. And after I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. Stand up and fight. You don't be afraid of them. Show courage. When the devil comes in and he's attacking your family, stand up and fight. Speak the truth. Don't walk away. Don't cower. Don't give up. Don't give in. Don't walk away. Stand up and fight. What you're fighting for is worth it. I don't know why I feel like I have to push on this point this morning, like the Lord's making me push on this. Don't give up. You have started. Don't quit. You have pushed a little ways down the road, and now your muscles are burning, and they're hurting, and it's not easy. But nobody said it was going to be easy. Don't stop. What you're fighting for is worth it. You're not fighting for right now. See, the devil tries to get you thinking just the next week or the next 24 hours or the next 5 minutes. If I'll just have a drink and it'll make me feel better. No, you're thinking about the next 5 minutes. Think about the next 100 years. What about your children and your grandchildren? Fight for them. Fight for them. Yes, I know it would be easy right now. Yes, I know you're discouraged. Yes, I know it looks dark. But don't quit. Show courage. Stand up. Grab a sword. Pray out loud. After I looked things over, I said, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord and fight for your brothers, your sons, and your daughters. You got too much to fight for to give up now. When our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to his own work. Now, I just want to stop and say, when you really show courage, when you stand up and fight for what you believe in, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times, you find out that the resistance you thought was there isn't real. It isn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. When you push on it, the devil is a master at painting imaginary things in front of you. He'll paint it bad. He'll paint it dark. And he'll say, you don't want to go this way. Oh, if you go with the Lord, you got to go right through the middle of this, and you don't want to go through the middle of this. And he'll paint it dark. And sometimes, if you just put your head down and run on that road toward heaven, if you just put your head down and say, I'm going through this. It may be bad. I may not make it, but I'm going through it. If you'll put your head down and run through the middle of it, sometimes it all dissolves into mist, and everything you thought was there is not. Did you know that very few things you've ever worried about at 3 a.m. have ever happened? It's true. Very few of the things you ever thought were going to happen at 3 in the morning, while you're sitting there like, I'm afraid it's going to happen. Few of those things are ever going to happen. Put your head down and run. Go forward. Charge. Because when you do, sometimes you don't they didn't even have to actually fight. All they had to do was step up and look like they were going to fight and be actually ready to fight. If it came to that, I've got my sword, I've got my spear, I've planted my feet. Come on! Bring it on! Hit me with your best shot. And the other people go, okay, never mind. And they leave. And they go back to the work. Number 4, when they let up, you don't. Whoever they is in your life, who is your they? Whenever they let up, you don't. From that day on, half my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armor. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were building the wall. Wow, this guy's still serious about it. Like they're still going to build the wall, but he's got half the people working and half the people guarding now. Each of the builders wore his sword at his side while he worked. So he's got his sword strapped on, he's working, and he's wearing his sword. So I can transform any minute from I'm laying mortar to I'm fighting for my life. At any second, I can change that way. But the man who sounded the trumpet stayed with me. And I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, the work is extensive and spread out. Now, they're building a wall all the way around the ancient city of Jerusalem. Like it's very spread out. It's blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks. How are you going to defend that whole wall? Well, here's what he said. If the enemy comes here, how will the people on the other side of the city even know that there's a battle going on? You know, how's that going to happen? So he made a plan. He said, we're going to get a trumpet. The person with the trumpet's going to stay with me. When we hear that there's an attack or we hear there's a danger along the line, the man, and they're coming to break through, I'll be right there, and the man with the trumpet, and everybody, get together wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, join us there, and our God will fight for us. So we continue the work with half the men holding spears from the first light of dawn until the stars came out. At that time, I also said to the people, have every man and his helper stay inside Jerusalem at night so they can serve as guards by night and workmen by day. Boy, that's brutal, isn't it? Whew. That's like you're pulling doubles. You know, they're working a shift. And listen, I know that sometimes your life gets hard, okay? I know it's true. Honestly, this morning, I'm tired, okay? I'm very tired. And I did 12 and a half hours yesterday, 13 and a half hours the day before that, and 15 the day before that. I know sometimes there are seasons where it's hard and the work weighs down and presses down on it. I know that's true. Sometimes the spiritual battle is hard and it presses down on you, weighs down on you. But when that happens, just remember this. Jesus never said it would be easy. He did say it would be worth it. He never promised your road would be smooth. He just promised He'd take you somewhere worth going. The other road may seem smooth, but it's just because it's slippery and you can't stop yourself easy, right? And it's sliding the way down to hell. You follow Jesus and the road will sometimes be hard, but you'll go somewhere worth going. So Nehemiah installed all of these systems. He put all these things in place. And look at verse 23. He also led by example. Neither I, nor my brothers, nor my men, nor the guards with me took off our clothes. Each one had his weapon even when he went for water. They slept in their clothes and worked hard. They worked day and night, and they'd lay down and crash out for a little bit wearing their same clothes. They're always wearing their sword. They always are ready, always vigilant. Sometimes this kind of work is the price of what it takes to build something that lasts. So listen, husbands, if you're building something that lasts, you know the devil's going to come against your marriage. You know this is going to happen. You know there's going to be temptations. So you stand up, you prepare, you think about it, you pray hard, you double down, you work harder, you fight for it. How do you fight for your marriage? There's 100 different ways, but fight for it by talking with her and loving her and checking in with her. And don't just check out when you get home and disappear inside your little cave. Don't do it. Come on out, talk to her, be there, trust her, talk to her, share with her. Be willing to do that. I know you're exhausted. I know you're tired. But keep your sword with you, right? Fight for that relationship. Fight for it. It's worth it. When you're kids, you're trying to build something lasting with your kids. Parents, listen to me. I know it's hard. And I know they don't listen the first time or the third time or the 300th time. I know they don't. I know. But fight for it. What you're building is worth it. You're trying to build a kid that grows up into a man or a woman, a real one who loves the Lord and follows Him. Don't quit. I know it's hard. Be faithful. Be vigilant. I know that all the other kids at school get to do it and they come home and they're like, oh, the other kid is going to do it. I know that's true, but fight for it. You're not trying to build every other kid at school. You're not trying to do that. You're building something worth it. All right. Look at this quote from Calvin Coolidge to close today. Calvin Coolidge, one of the presidents of the United States, he said this. He said, nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. They will conquer eventually, if you're willing to persist and keep going. Now let me ask you this. The last blank, did I give you the last blank? Oh, when they let up, you don't. When they let up, you don't. Is that what you mean? Hold on, let me open my... Oh, he used this time of peace to install systems. Yes, sorry, I was looking at my own and I didn't have it marked on my own. He used this time of peace to install systems. So while they weren't being attacked, he said, we're going to build some stuff. Now let me tell you this. In that time of peace, when things kind of let up, let me tell you about my own marriage for a second, okay? Liz and I had this 2 or 3 things that always conflict kept coming back. Okay? We would get attacked. And in fact, the truth is that we discovered early on after we moved here that Saturday was the day we were most likely to fight. Yeah. It's just true. Now, fight, I use the word fight loosely. Nobody was throwing plates, okay? Nobody was throwing plates. Nobody was taking a swing at anybody. I just mean if we were going to argue, if we're going to have intense moments of fellowship, it was going to be on Saturday, right? And the reason for that is because the devil's mean. I'm a pastor, and the thing he wants me doing is going into Sunday like this. Right? Or he wants me going into Sunday like this. I told her, right? Because if I'm mad or I'm just frustrated, I can't have the joy of the Lord and lead a congregation if I'm not leading I'm not pastoring the little church at home very well. Am I making sense to you? All right. So the devil would attack us on Saturdays. And I remember the day when I realized this. Like it was this crazy moment. Liz and I were talking, and we were really like, no, because you know, it was intense. And all of a sudden, we just stopped, and I looked at Liz and I said, "Do you know that we always do this on Saturday?" She was like, "Yeah, that's true. We do, don't we? This is like on Saturdays is when we have this." And I said, "You know what? This is the devil. This is the devil. He's fighting us. He wants me to be mad at you. He wants you to be angry with me and frustrated with each other. This is what he wants." And I said, "This is not okay with me. This is not okay." And so we had that, and then it was this like 3-month cycle where we would have conflict on a situation, and I'd kind of like, okay, I'll fix it. And I'd kind of fix it, but not really. And the conflict would go away. How many know what I'm talking about? Like the conflict kind of goes away, and it's like she's not right up in the air right now about this, and I'm not mouthing off about stuff. It's kind of like, but in that time where there wasn't any conflict, I didn't change anything. Am I making sense to you? I didn't change anything in that little time where everything dipped and the conflict wasn't there. It just was like out of sight, out of mind, and I didn't change anything. Those times when the conflict is gone, that's when you install systems to deal with the next time it comes around. Am I making sense? So you install, when the conflict is down, you keep going on date night. Right? You keep going on date night. You install times where like there's about a 10 or 15 minute time almost every single night where Liz and I just sit down and talk. Right? We just talk. Because I know I'm a guy. I'm a man with a side of guy. We don't need that. We don't need that. We're just kind of like rah, 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 rah. We go to sleep and we wake up and we do it again. You know, because we're men. And I found out that I needed to talk to her, and I needed to listen to her and have some specific time where I planned to do that. And so we did. And guess what? Over the course of time, we dealt with that. We dealt with that stuff. Now we've dealt with another set. We went to some counseling, talked through with a counselor and talked through some stuff, and we've dealt with things. And there has never been a time when my marriage is stronger. Let me tell you why. Because they, meaning the devil, doesn't want me to win. And when he didn't want me to win, I fought back. And I stood up and I said, we're going to build something that lasts here. And you can too. Right? Let's bow our heads together for prayer.